Hello and welcome to another episode of the Rebecca Saunders Show. I am super pumped about this episode, and I have chosen the most incredible woman to join me on none other than International Women's Day, the most incredible sales leader, recruiter, and go-getter gun that I know. Welcome to the show, Kara Atkinson.
Oh, Rebecca Saunders, thank you for having me. What an intro. Love it. Good to
Oh,
be here. What a day to be alive.
I know, right? It's going to be a good one. Now, look, I instinctively knew we are recording this prior, obviously, to International Women's Day, but I know the conversations are starting. I know it's something that you, as many women, are very extremely passionate about, but you are privy to some significant conversations within the work that you do because you work with high-level C-suite leaders in the sales space. What are you and what are you seeing today? Like, what does International Women's Day look like? What are those conversations happening? Because I know it's still a bit of a shit show internally within many organizations.
Oh, unfortunately, I have to totally agree. And the conversation you and I are having is so pertinent today because, I've been on a little bit of a platform this morning about getting all these phone calls from, it just happened to be coincidentally this morning, 4 separate female leaders from 4 separate ASX listed organizations who are all leaders and just powerful, just powerful warriors in their own right. And we all had the same conversation, and they all feel like they've been hired as the token female, and they all feel like their set of circumstances from an employment perspective is different to the males. And we're in 2022, and that is still visible to everybody in an organization. So it just absolutely enrages me to know that in every brief that I get in recruitment, people will go, every client will go to me, oh, Kara, would love a female, love a female, love a female. Okay, why would you love a female? No one can really answer that because I feel like they're ticking a box. Then I go and get this amazing woman who, because face it, I'm a Houdini, pull it out of my hat. Yes, there she is. She's amazing. And then the very first thing they do is clip her wings and make her operate like every other male in the organisation. So, yes, I'm so happy I'm here about International Women's Day. Can't believe we've only got a day. It needs to be a whole year. And it's just the gap for me. I don't feel like it's closing. I feel like it's getting wider. Maybe I'm just getting older and getting more impatient, but I'm not seeing change.
And so within those conversations that you're putting these fantastic women into these roles, coming up to a day like this, have they got any input into what the organizations are doing and putting together in terms of International Women's Day and raising awareness? I know there's a lot of, I can see it everywhere in the run up to the day, all over the internet today, male dominated panel discussions and, let's just do a random morning tea or we'll just celebrate this women's charity. Like, where are these conversations falling down inside big global organizations when it comes to actually what it is and how to get the workforce behind it?
Well, let's not deny, Becca, that cake does fix everything until it's morning tea on International Women's Day. Mm-hmm. So I'm also part of a male-dominated networking group, as most women in corporate are. We just happen to be the minority everywhere we turn. And within that group, a question was posed about in fact, the question was posed by a male to the other males in the group. It was actually written saying, we're planning a morning tea on International Women's Day, and has anyone else got any other ideas I could steal? What do the men think? And I thought, wow, what are we having a day about? If it were me going into women that experience, if it were me going into men that, couldn't break free from the state manager level into a general manager level, and I wanted to understand why that gap, that ceiling was there for me, the first thing I would do is go and talk to that group that it affected. So I don't understand why we keep asking the same question of the people who are not in the group that is affected. So I do believe, and of course there are some amazing males that you and I have both experienced who really get this. And typically, by the way, they're dads with daughters.
Daughters,
but
yeah.
On the whole, and particularly in my male-dominated industries that I recruit in, on the whole, the conversation's being regurgitated by males on International Women's Day. So ask us. We'd love to have our input and tell you what we really want. And it's not a morning. Can I swear?
You can. We've done it.
It's not an effing morning tea with cake. Yeah. It's not. We're so sick of being the token. you know, and everyone tells us in interview processes, oh no, you're not going to token hire, it's you that we want, it's your skills and experience. But the minute you get hired in a business, you get put into the token role. So you get rolled out at International Women's Day, you get put on that panel because we're a big corporate, we've ticked gender diversity, but it's not actually the reality of what's actually happening here. So and you know what I was thinking, like everyone would go, oh, you look at Kara, you know, she's on a rant. And again, I think that's a word that gets attached to women that talk about facts. We're ranting, we're emotional. Actually, this is reality of what we all face every day.
So true. It is incredibly true. And it's an everyday scenario. And I know through your work and the conversations that we've had over years, right? We've known each other for years now. The frustration of just having those wings clipped and having those glass ceilings just almost shrinking, right? Like nothing's getting easier. It's just getting harder and harder. Is there any sort of way through it? Can you see the best ways has anyone succeeded in doing it well that you think, wow, if only other organizations did something similar, or if only, you know, that woman could share their story a little bit louder, but she's on the path to keep going up and good on her, keep smashing through those goals. Like, you know, as much as I hate the smashing through them, they shouldn't be there. Where are people succeeding in it? Where can we learn?
You know what? I don't have a list to say these are the companies. Like you, I'm surrounded by social media posts of male-dominated panels and conversations that are led by the CEOs of this country. And I can't quite remember the percentage. I think it's something like 97% of CEOs in Australia are male. So naturally, if they're going to lead the conversation, of course they're going to be males, but they're not, you know, they're not dipping into the very audience or the issue that they want to address. And so where I would see the change needing to happen is start to see even visually, we're all very visual, and, you know, we're all got attention spans of a gnat, as Janine always reminds us. And I think visually being able to be surrounded by the things that we want to see in corporate. So when you want to look great, you surround yourself by magazine photos of these amazing supermodels. And equally in corporate, when we want to close this gap, we need to see more consistent imagery of women in these corporate roles. And I'm not talking about, you know, your stock photos online. I'm talking about real women in real corporates in real leadership roles who are also pulling women up around them as well. You know, I was at a International Women's Day breakfast last year, COVID, so before COVID, when we were allowed to get in a room with people. And it was a construction breakfast, and unusually the entire panel was female, but it was an International Women's Day, so I love that they did that. And it was being emceed by a female as well. And so I was so excited to get into this room. There's like 200 of us, and I was so intrigued. I actually wanted to, you know, rush the stage and be a facilitator, but I digress. The very first question, you're never going to believe what was asked. The very first question that was asked on that panel, all females, exceptional leaders in their own right, had been selected based on their experience and qualities. What was the first question that was asked in this room full of people ready to make an impact? The facilitator said to the panel, if you're a spirit animal, what would be your animal and why? What's your spirit animal and why? And I was just so deflated. I knew some of the women on the panel, and I knew what they brought to the table, and I knew what they had to bring to the conversation. And I was equally disappointed. I guess, you know, no one's ever going to have that moment to go, actually, can we make a new question? Like, that's a big moment to do that. And maybe we need to do more of that. But they all went and answered it, and it was as horrific as you can imagine it would be for them, for the audience. And I just thought, and that's International Women's Day coming at you.
Yeah, it's skirting around the conversation rather than having the tough conversations and having them publicly, I think, is the most important.
It's even deeper than skirting around. Can you imagine a male construction panel and the first question they get asked, what's your spirit animal and why? Just wouldn't happen. Would not happen. Yeah. They would have maybe had that question in the 1950s. Yeah, here we are in 2020, I think it was 2020, asking that. It's more than skirting around. It's actually becoming quite blatant, and I find that really scary.
And have you seen that become scarier as the pandemic has hit, and has, you know, those conversations are now not happening face to face, or, you know, the bonds that you build internally within an organization have not necessarily been built right? Throughout COVID.
Interesting question whether the pandemic has had anything to do with it. I think males potentially have more empathy with females around the parenting piece. So yes, a lot of us have access now to parental leave, and that's great because it's for both people. But something fundamentally gets stripped when you have children and you become a different person. That's just what happens when you become a mother, and only mothers will understand that you do feel differently, and these little people that strip your life and soul are now going to come first. No matter what happens in your life, they're just going to come first. Yeah. So in the pandemic, we all got put together on these screens and we were grappling through homeschooling and the nightmare that was. So all of a sudden, I think, it didn't really matter what your gender was because we're all facing the same nightmare situation of trying to keep our heads above water in our own jobs, plus deal with the kids homeschooling and all the personalities in the house. And never in our lives has that happened before. And so I think for the last 2 years, the focus has been very much inwardly on our own homes and less about our jobs. So that's been an interesting kind of stripping back of what's important and where the priorities lie. And I'm seeing that play out now as people return to work and what that looks like and what people are prepared to give back and what they're not. But, I still, even as parents, I'm sorry to the dads out there, but I think, the mums definitely pick up the lion's share, and that's why it's so difficult to address in a corporate situation, because even if you have flexibility for that, mum who's a female leader, the flexibility doesn't really translate to freedom, and it makes it difficult for a male to manage that process because there's not true empathy until you experienced it. So I'm thinking that's where it comes from.
And do you think the pandemic now would have enabled some experience of it and sort of see those conversations and behaviors shifting moving forward as workforces start to get back together?
I would have, until now. Here we are again talking about one date in the diary in March for International Women's Day. So I don't think true change is ever going to happen for anything in the diary on one day in the diary.
It's just a day that
Valentine's Day. Give me roses because it's Valentine's Day. No, I'm not going to do that. So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of it. But then you can't not be a fan if you're a female. So I'm not really sure how to. It's like a love-hate relationship with it.
Yeah, and it's almost spaghetti, right? I see it as a spaghetti, like a bowl of spaghetti, in terms of there's got to be a way through it in terms of the journey, but which way is the right way is, going to be different to everyone and every organization, and it will just keep coming around year on year. But
I just keep hearing more and more in all the conversations I'm having this year that the tokenism word. Tokenism. I think more and more women are waking up to being a token. And even though potentially in a recruitment process, and obviously that's what I'm most privy to, they're assured that they absolutely aren't a token, the reality can show up quite differently once they get into that organisation. So it's absolutely not enough from a quota perspective to tick the box and show the board that you've hired in diversity, and that diversity plays out as a gender thing. Because then if nothing else has changed at the tail end in terms of that employee life cycle, then it's a token hire.
Yeah. Well, and how can you navigate that in a recruitment perspective? Can you, you're placing from your side, you're privy to both sides of it, right? Like you're getting the briefs from your clients. Do you get an inkling when it is a token hire? Obviously you said at the very beginning, you get blatant briefs of we want a woman in that role, but when it's not as blatant as that, is there any subtleties to it that people can watch out for that come up in interview conversations?
Yeah, I mean, I encourage my clients to be really black and white with me. So there's no political correctness in our conversations one-to-one. And I kind of pride myself on having the ability to have that type of relationship with people. I think it's really good. So I'm not bothered by the fact that they say it. What I'm bothered by is the answer when I ask why. When they can't articulate another reason other than, well, we want to make sure that we've got even numbers, then I know it's just a token and it's a tick on the box. But when I say, why do you need more females? And they might say something like along the lines of our customer group in this particular area, we know from our research that they're going to definitely respond differently to a female in the group. Then I think, great, at least whether that's right or wrong, you've thought about the application of a female in corporate being what's necessary needed for this particular business. So, but I've got to say, Becca, like 98% of the people that I ask that to just don't really know why. they're just responding to it. It's it's another KPI we have to hit, and that's when that's and often even me, I'll get engaged as the female recruiter, because if you're female, you're going to attract other females. So don't get me wrong, I'll sell hard on my gender all day, but I'll definitely then also challenge around it. And when they get in the business and it's a very male dominated business, I'm very interested in what happens in that first year.
And how have you seen that change between going into a workforce in person and going into a virtual workforce?
Well, it's probably less around gender. I think it's just as a human, it's been such a huge restripping exercise. I mean, even, in an interview situation, we used to be able to trade on body language, and there's thousands of experts in the world that would bring you on, from June Daly Watkins back in the day, that would bring you in on deportment and the right way to communicate with people and how to look and what kind of handshake to have and how to lean in and how to lean out and how to mirror. All of a sudden, in the last 2 years, all we've got is literally, I'm struggling to even get my beautiful necklace in. So you've got nothing about what I'm wearing. We all know we all went with the trackies and the Ugg boots in winter, and we've got to somehow make an impact in an interview. And importantly, on the other side, as the interviewer, how do you show off your beautiful corporate office on George Street that has vines hanging down with this amazing kitchen? You can't. So you have to trade on human connection. And to create an impact in, let's say, 45 to an hour with only this is a huge, it's a huge task. And I think it's vastly underestimated on how to do it on both sides. And when I get feedback from people, from clients after interviews, and they go, from Zoom interviews, and they go, just didn't really feel any energy. I have to say, well, talk me through energy in your mind. Tell me about an interview filled with energy and an interview not filled with energy. And often what is really hard for introverts through this last 2 years is energy means loud and talks a lot and leans into the camera a lot and is this kind of thing, and asking a lot of questions. That's what energy means. And introverts aren't necessarily like that. So making an impact in the pandemic on video, I know you're a seasoned practitioner, but many of us have been like, oh, that's a big ask. And then when they get hired, to go even further, they get hired. There's many of my people in my world who have been onboarded and inducted just like this and haven't actually physically met anyone yet, and find that when they do, as they're starting to now, it's quite intimidating, because that relationship that you've built online can be so different when it's face-to-face.
Very much so. Very much so, particularly when people almost put on that face. You did speak about putting the trackies underneath and dressing up on the bottom. You're almost putting that armor on just for that one bit, and then you'll strip it off and take the lippy off, take the necklace off, and get back into comfy as soon as that camera goes off.
I know. It's like Tinder on steroids. Like, who are you really going to get? You don't know. Get off the screen.
Let's find out.
I just find your world so fascinating with this, and I can see why it's on this trajectory, because it's just such an important part of our toolkit now to get to nail video. And it has never been as important. I don't think that will ever go away, because I'm even seeing it now. I'm sure you are too. If we can all get away with a meeting on Zoom and rather than face-to-face, we do now, because it saves us so much time. We can go back to back. But there's a lot of people that haven't nailed impact on video. So it's like saying, I'm not going to nail working collaboratively. You just got to. So you got to work out your way to do it.
Yeah, there's no excuses. And obviously, everyone watching and listening right now, if you need help with how to look fabulous on camera, I've got you covered completely, very much so. But yeah, eyeline, the whole lot, lighting, energy. But in terms of the recruitment side, Kara, like in terms of being that person that is being interviewed on camera, I can make you look amazing, right? I can teach you all that stuff. How can you navigate getting your personality and your experience across for an employer? And we'll do it vice versa afterwards, because I think it's good to get both sides. What tips have you got for people going through recruitment right now in a completely virtual world?
Well, I think that on video, as a candidate, if you're being interviewed, you have a bigger opportunity to to have some small talk first. Because the body language and everything is stripped back and you don't have that, I think you got to have a couple of killer questions to ask more broadly at the start of a meeting that aren't necessarily about the job or the company at all. So something that can build rapport really quickly with that person. And whether it's around the timing of the interview, the time of day that you're having it, if you're both in the same city, the weather, that there needs to be that rapport building outside of everything, and just get to know them, hear their tone, see how they speak, see how you look on screen. That just take the time to, before you get into any questions around the role and culture, try, if you can, to somehow have a laugh in that first couple of minutes. I think that really diffuses the situation, because normally, if I'm going to if I'm going to a meeting, I'll madly look around that person's office to spot a photo or an award on the wall or a sporting team or some kind of way that we can bond. And so on a Zoom, you don't have that. So you've got to look at the circumstances of the way the meeting got set up. So for you, for example, Rebecca, I would say to you, if someone introduced us, I'd just go, oh, actually, I'm so pleased to meet you, Becca, because we both know Janine and we haven't ever met. And it's so good I'm finally actually meeting you. Something to take out the nervousness of that situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of, and that's both sides, would you say? Are both sides coming into that situation, or from an employer perspective?
It's harder for some reason, harder on the client side. And this is probably not around video. It's probably around where the market is now, that there's more jobs right now than there are people. And until the borders open, that won't change. So we're all trading for amazing talent, and we all would hire, I think, tomorrow if we could find an amazing person in our businesses, and that person's just not there. So never before have we been interviewed as much as we are being interviewed as the client as we are right now. So I think as the person that's interviewing, don't forget you are being interviewed, and therefore you must bring your A game. If you're very dry and only showing this and reading off a script from an interview perspective, you may have got away with that face-to-face, but on video you have to be really different. And so I would shake up the script and ask questions that are really leading and different to hear about who that person is, and really kind of create more of a bespoke situation than perhaps you have ever had to do beforehand. Because if you don't come across with a strong likability factor in that first interview, they've got so many options, they just won't come back on again. I've had people just go, don't think that guy was for me. Just the way that he is kind of hammering me with questions just wasn't really for me. Okay, well, what do you do with that?
You can't.
It's an interview. You're going to ask questions. So you've got to try and create, as the interviewer, try and make it as a conversation as much as you can, because these people have options and they will swipe left or right. Whichever the one where you want to get out of the situation.
Definitely I think it's been a long time. Yeah. Oh, I love that. And you're right. It is about being, you're on both sides. It's an interview. And I think that's a really crucial piece to keep in mind, particularly now more than ever, as things are very closed. In terms of taking those elements to the next level, or having breaking into that next level up when you're not necessarily meeting people within a network or a conference or anything like that, where are you seeing that people are getting the support they need to sort of tool up on these things as employees, I would say?
Well, RebeccaSaunders.com, video with impact. Boom! Got the mic. I think that I'm not sure whether there's anything as fundamental as doing your own research. I always invest in self-learning and being able to change and adapt quickly to the environment that suits you. And so knowing that video and operating like this has to be a part of our future, then for me, there's plenty of, YouTube on how to do that well, and how to ask great questions in an interview and how to present that on video. So for me, I'd be very much doing my own homework there and talking to friends and networks about how they found what works. And after the video too, I think there's a real opportunity to still bring the human element back. So whether it was pre-COVID or in COVID, a handwritten note is just so unusual that I can't believe more people don't do it.
Yeah. Mind blowing,
So
right?
even if you have absolutely failed your interview and you're just like self-flagellation and it's all going on, a handwritten note can resurrect a lot, even just remend the bridge. So I still think that there's ways of, getting off technology and being a little bit old school, even in the circumstances that we're all facing in this situation now.
I love that so much. It is thinking outside of the square in order to have the impact so that you're noticed and can have the impact you want to have on the world.
Yeah, I mean, impact with video, but the real impact comes after you're off the video is kind of cool scenario to think about.
That's for me. It's the rippling on. If you can have that impact on camera, then that translates into a room. But the cool thing with videos when you're creating them and putting them out there is they're almost live forever. The impact that something like that can have moving forward and trickling out is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah. And I think too, when you are on video a lot, and you do use video and you're pretty comfortable with it, you have to be really aware of that when you walk into a room in 4D, because people have a perception of you that is right or wrong because they just watched you on video so much. So I think you have to, in person, then really slow it down and get back to basics, because these people come in, I think they just have a perception that's potentially right or wrong. And, you walked into a room before and people come up to you and go, oh, I saw you on this. And they almost feel like the relationship is here and you're still here. So you have to quickly adapt to that scenario as well, I think.
Yeah, it's very much, you already know the person. You seem to already know the person from looking at that content. So,
yes.
Yeah.
And then you have that awkward encounter, they're like, so, yeah.
I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me where I've been.
I bet. I was going to say, you're on video more than anyone I know, and I can imagine people walking down the street going, that girl's on my Instagram feed.
Yeah, well, it happens to me, and it's very bizarre, but I do it to other people too. I've had full-blown conversations in supermarkets at checkouts, just having a little chat as though I'd known this person my entire life, and
well, that's why I love that you tell me to always be real, because I think you've always said don't be anyone who you're not on video. So if you're an introvert, you have to say to, in an interview situation back on that, I think you have to own it and say, this is not my preferred way of meeting you. I'm terrified of this video. I don't use it very often. I don't have the, the ring lights and I don't look amazing. I would much prefer to be doing this face-to-face and just own it. Because if you go in and go, oh, here I am and I've got everything, and then you turn up to work on the first day in 4D, they're like, who do we hire? I think that would be a little bit of a tricky scenario. So I do love your message to me is always just be who you are, and you can never fail at that. So I think it's the same in an interview situation.
Completely. I think it's crucial in both our professions there to be you and be unapologetically so.
People love you or hate you. It's all good.
Yeah. Either way. So, Kara, if people are hating us, they'll switch off and turn off. But people that are loving this and want to find you and find out more about your work and SPARC. We haven't even touched on SPARC, but where can they find you?
So the best way, I'm obviously pretty prolific on LinkedIn, and I'm on there, and a pretty quick responder on there. So I love to write, so I'm on there a lot and love to connect and broaden my network on there. And obviously I've got a website, blah, 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 Kara Atkinson. I'm sure people can find that. But what I really love is helping people accelerate their careers. So whether that's my client who is recruiting for a team and they know that getting this team right is going to accelerate their career, or whether it's the candidate who's looking for a new move, I'm very invested in the person much more beyond a resume and a job description. I really want to know who they are. And the reason I've done this for 25 years is probably the thing that keeps me in is that I've placed people twice and 3 times in their career, which is just, I'm so humbled that I get trusted to do that. It's pretty cool. And the other thing I love about it is when I hire people in and then I get to help build their teams with them. That's a pretty cool part of the work as well. So, yeah, been around for 100 years, probably be around for another 100 years. God,
you will. I see how much it lights you up, and I see the impact that you bringing the right talent into the organizations has on you, the people that you place, and the organizations that you have. So definitely go look Kara up. We'll pop in all the URLs so you can find her on the show notes.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not the messiah here. I've got it wrong, and when it's wrong, it's painful. But I can tell you one thing: when I get it wrong, I'll own it. And I definitely ask different questions to try and get it right the first go. But no, I do. You're right. I do. As much as I've tried to run from it, I actually love the whole get right person, right role, right business.
Yeah, and that's what I love. I love that about you. I love that about your work, and I love that you wholeheartedly do that through everything that you do. Right, like the everything is genuine, which is something that's a trait you should be extremely proud to be able to have both personally and in the business, which
Thank you, lovely.
shines through. So, Kara, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been awesome. We have touched International Women's Day, video and recruitment all in one. And in the words of Donna McGeorge, I think we've done it in 25 minutes. So, you know, we're absolutely nailing it. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's so lovely to be here. Thank you for having me.